Now this might be some Haunted Mansion news you all want to hear. WDW News Today is reporting a rumor that there could be show changes happening inside the Haunted Mansion during this refurb. We all know what's happening with the exterior queue and ADA updates. The Haunted Mansion has been closed since January, and in that time they have completely destroyed the exterior queue in order to build an entirely new one. The main purpose was to update its ADA compliance. They're building a new elevator for the guests that need mobility assistance. Reportedly, that's the primary motivation for this update to the Haunted Mansion. And in the process of adding this ADA compliance, they have to dig up the entire exterior queue in order to install that new elevator. And in the process, they decided to take that opportunity to build a beautiful new queue in its place. We hope so, at least. But aside from that, something that a lot of people have been asking, have been wondering, are there going to be any changes to the actual ride, to the actual Haunted Mansion attraction? I mean, it does seem like a pretty good opportunity to do that. It's going to be closed for, what, about 7 months? That's a long time. They could get something done in that time. Would they use that opportunity to update the ride itself? Maybe not so much adding or changing show elements, but simply to update it, modernize it. Probably not, but that's just my assumption. Recall that when the parks closed during COVID, the Haunted Mansion was actually in the process of getting an update then. So they had that 7 months plus more in order to do any necessary updates to the ride system to make it, up to date in terms of just how it functioned. But they did also make some updates to that final queue segment. There were show changes, the portrait hall, and the final stretch before boarding the Doom buggies. So I don't think it's likely that they're going to have to do that again. It's not as though the attraction got into worse shape in the couple of years it's been since that time. Meanwhile, some have feared that Disney would take this opportunity. They felt the same way back then during COVID as well, but they might take this opportunity to make some changes to the attraction, to some of the more controversial elements, namely, the ghost host and the stretching room. But I'm pretty confident that nothing like that is going to be happening. There is, though, this rumor, as reported by WDW News Today last Wednesday. Per their sources, Disney may be looking to make changes to the bride and to the hitchhiking ghost scene. There would be a new bride in a new scene, one where Constance would be placed in front of a window. And this is actually kind of a big deal for me, or for others who are familiar with the long-term history of the bride and her story as it takes place in that part of the attraction. A window behind Constance would be a very telling and very thoughtful addition to that scene. I'll explain why that is in just a minute. But let's talk about first those hitchhiking ghosts. The practical hitchhiking ghosts that you see as you around the corner, those are going to remain, thankfully. It's the projected ones, the ones that you see in the mirror that follow you home. That's where the rumored changes are going to happen. Today at Disneyland, those ghosts are Pepper's ghosts, just like the ones dancing in the banquet hall. These are practical ghosts on the opposite side of the Doom buggies that are projected into the mirrors. It's a very old trick, and it's one that has worked quite well for decades. It still works today. But obviously, technology keeps moving forward, and one could say that it's probably easier and perhaps better show to use animations. And note that this is something they've actually been doing already for years now at the Magic Kingdom. They can do obviously a lot more with animations. They can get more creative, have more fun with it. But I'm still not crazy about it when I hear this. I'm just an old, Disney purist at heart, so I'm happy with the Pepper's Ghost effects there. I feel like it's just fine. I don't need the animations, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. If it happens, it happens. But Disney, if you're listening, I think a lot of us are just fine with Pepper's Ghosts. But one thing that I would be happy to see change is that scene with the bride in the attic and adding that window. Her story, even her name, has evolved, has changed over the years. Today she's known as Constance Hatchaway, the Black Widow bride, with a suspicious history of dead husbands. But before that update, I think it was back in 2006, she was known as the Beating Heart Bride, a bride with a different past. One of her original stories, and this is the story that I subscribe to, it is my own personal headcanon, if you will, was that she was the unwitting, unknowing bride of Captain Gideon Gorlou, also known as the bloodthirsty pirate Captain Gore. On her wedding day to the captain, she goes upstairs to the attic, finds this treasure chest, opens it up, and in it are artifacts of memories of Captain Gore's past, revealing to her that he is the notorious and infamous pirate. Captain Gore discovers that she found this, and he's enraged and realizes that his secret could be revealed, and therefore he pushes her out the window in the attic and she falls to her death. It is her ghost that haunts him and eventually forces him to hang himself. Captain Gore, Gideon Gore-Lew, is the ghost host. But as far as this story is concerned, it's the window that they're adding to the scene that really has me interested. Interested because that falling out the window is the experience that we're meant to be having. As you travel through the attic, you make that left turn. Just as you turn, you face the Hatbox ghost, and then you fall backwards. The doom buggy turns backwards, and you fall backwards. That is supposed to be you. We're the bride. You're the bride falling out that window to her death, and then you arrive at the bottom. Your ghost now is scaring the bejesus out of the caretaker and his dog, and then you join the rest of the 999 ghosts having their party in the graveyard. So if Disney were looking to make that aspect of the attraction more real, more visual, more apparent to us as part of our experience, I'd be all in on that. I would be definitely into that. I would add, though, that I think it would be a stretch for them to go back to the Beating Heart Bride character, the victim character, because that would require you to change the entire attic scene, because the attic scene represents Constance Hatchaway's past, not the bride's past. Now, I mean, the article, the rumor does suggest that we're getting a new bride, but it doesn't say anything about the rest of the scene, and that would certainly be a more involved update to the attraction. I mean, I suppose it wouldn't be too difficult to do that. Again, they've got time to do it, but that's just more time and more expense. So I think the most likely scenario here, given if any of this is true, is that the bride is still Constance Hatchaway, which would actually suggest that she's the one doing the pushing. She's not the one falling, because she's obviously a murderous bride. She is the villain. So it's probably us who we have discovered her secret, and she's pushing us out the window. We are the ones falling to our death and then joining the graveyard party. And I've actually heard stories. I've read stories on the internet and people talking about how they've gone on backstage tours of the Haunted Mansion at Magic Kingdom, by the way, I should say, at Magic Kingdom, where that is actually what is, the story is being told there. But I don't think it's official. Disney has never said anything officially on this. There's no canon per se. I'm not sure that Disney wants to speak to, sort of clarifying the story. I feel like they've done just fine for the past, 50 plus years, 60 years now, of telling the story, having an open-ended story. I don't think it needs to be crystallized. This is more about our own interpretations, as it were. But if they do stick with Constance Hatchaway, then that's what would be happening. Is again, we would be the ones falling out the window, and Constance has killed us, I suppose. Personally, I prefer the story of the bride as being a victim more so than the villain. I prefer that. It's simpler. It's more interesting. I like it. Either way, this rumor is one of the more interesting ones that I've heard, and it tells me that Disney is still interested in making their attractions better. They didn't need to do that. They don't need to. Everybody would go to the Haunted Mansion, with or without it. So if they went for that, I would consider that an appeal to the guests, saying, here's something that we've made for you. So I'm happy either way if they do this. And especially because it does give a nod. It does acknowledge the original history of the Haunted Mansion. That's always something that I'm happy to hear. The original history of Disneyland in general. But for now, all we can see, all we'll know, all we can tell is what they're doing outside from the Mark Twain to the queue, which is moving along. Things have actually progressed. It looks like it's going in a forward direction. So we're hoping that this thing is done. The queue, that is done by the time that they open the attraction in August. Really looking forward to seeing those Imagineers make something wonderful, make something beautiful in that queue space. I have a lot of confidence, and I'm looking forward to having a modern aesthetic added to these, because they make things pretty beautiful these days. When they try really hard, they make things really, really nice. Would love also to hear from everyone out there watching. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the Beating Heart Bride, or do you like the Constance Hatchaway story? Let us know in the comments. And then thanks for watching, everybody. You can follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at FreshBakedDisney. And if you like our show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/FreshBaked. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And Fresh Baked.